It's great to be here and to be able to discuss Naranja Park, and I know you've plowed a lot of ground as it relates to Parks and Rec tonight, so there's some introductory slides here that I'll go through quickly. Just a little history of this project. It's certainly one that you initiated over a year ago. We were brought on board to work with the Oro Valley community to identify what was appropriate and needed at Naranja Park. One of our first tasks was the public outreach program that has been discussed tonight, the surveys and the questionnaires and the user groups, which involved more than 500 Oro Valley residents. So I think it's very reflective of the kind of the vision for this community as it relates to Naranja Park. That information was used to develop a program, simply a list of facilities to be developed at the park and a conceptual site plan. And as you well know, we don't live in a static environment, and 2014 was a very dynamic one in terms of parks as they relate to the town of Oro Valley Park System. So as we progressed through this planning process, there were adjustments made to reflect the other facilities that had been brought on board and that are now part of the Oro Valley Park System. That adjusted and modified plan, as Christy indicated, was presented to the Parks Board. They have recommended that you approve it. I think it's also worthwhile going back and I think this relates to some of the discussion earlier this evening, and what were some of the guiding principles that we used to develop this plan. And the direction we got from staff and from the town was simply the priority was to address community needs. And I think that's been stated a couple of times. We wanted to accommodate the widest range of users, different interest groups, not just one group or two groups, the widest range of ages, interests, abilities, mobilities, all of those different users in the town. Secondarily, but also important, is the notion of sports tourism, if you will, bringing people into the community and stimulating economic activity as a result. We have also, along the line, been challenged to examine the feasibility of what's being proposed. Does it make sense? What are the short-term and long-term benefits and costs of each of the facilities proposed? And then also, we're looking at one park in the park system and to make sure that it made sense in the context of the larger park system that's being planned as well. So that's a little bit of background. So the facility program, the list of facilities is 4 or 5 major categories. Top of the list has been from day one are those family recreational facilities that have been discussed. And we'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail. Certainly the community input suggested that was a priority for the town of Oro Valley. You've heard many times the acute need for additional lighted sports fields. That was also that's also part of the program to build those. An outdoor performance venue has for 20, 30 years been a desire in this community. Our charge was to try to find the appropriate scale and scope of that facility as it relates to what's feasible in the long term for the town of Oro Valley. The event center is kind of a major program element, and it really is a consolidation of a lot of the different facilities that were proposed, indoor recreational facilities, spaces for any number of community events, and so we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And certainly to build those types of park facilities, there's infrastructure required to make that happen. This is the conceptual site plan for the Naranja Park. We'll come back to this a number of times during the course of the presentation. For orientation, north is to the right. On the left side of that map is Naranja Drive, the archery facilities. North of the image, or to the top of the image, is Copper Creek subdivisions. To the bottom would be the Montera subdivisions. The proposed park facilities in the middle. Tangerine Road would be to the right and is a little bit off of that screen. So starting with what the community said was the most important. Integrated into the overall park will be a wide range of general and family recreational facilities. Certainly, walking paths have been extremely popular and heavily used throughout the Oro Valley community in parks and in other settings. They will be a major component or a significant component of the development at Naranja Park. There's an existing trail system, unpaved paths, as well as ADA accessible paths that will be developed in the park. The kind of the community component that was mentioned earlier, the picnic ramadas, having a place where you can take your family, have a picnic, reserve either a small ramada or perhaps a group ramada for your company or organization to have an event. That's at the top of the list of facilities to be developed at the park. The playgrounds and splash pad are, I think, really key components of this, and I think I would describe them as not incidental to the overall park, but destinations for park visitors. So these are of a scale, of an interest, of an innovative nature where people go there because there's this type of really large, interesting, and attractive playground and or splash park. Both are components of the overall system. So. Other recreational facilities that are proposed, community lawn, we'll talk about in just a minute. There has been a long-standing request for a skate and bike park. And this is where we as the team, staff, and the consultants need to take a look at the information that we did receive from the public. And skate park was not at the top of the list from the telephone survey. And it's no surprise that the survey was limited to residents over 18 years of age. So in our working meetings, working with the PD, this was identified as an important resource, something that is needed, can have value to the community, and will be a part of the program for Naranja Park. The dog park was very popular. You've already responded to that need. It's open and is existing. Archery range continues to be developed and improved over time, and will be part of these general recreational facilities where you can simply go and enjoy these as part of your park experience. The next major component of the program are the lighted sports fields. And you've heard the discussions tonight of the acute need, the existing deficiency, the growing demand for that, and also the lost opportunity to host events because there are not complexes with multiple fields in the town of Oro Valley or in northwest Tucson for that matter. So this plan proposes a total of 8 multi-sport fields, which is consistent with the strategic plan, and a complex of 4 baseball fields for youth, although one of those fields would be larger for the older fellows that talk to you tonight. Those images on top are the new Naranja fields that are getting rave reviews from both residents and visitors to the community, and the potential for that increases with each field that's built at Naranja Park. Existing 2 fields would be to the left there. The additional fields would be built to the north. The baseball complex would be on the northern portion of the developable area of the site. 3 of those fields would be Little League configuration, a larger one with a 300-foot outfield fence to meet the needs of the older, the program for the older kids. The outdoor performance venue, I think if we look historically, there's been an interest in this and perhaps a desire to have something that's not feasible or sustainable over time. So we've re-examined that and tried to find an appropriate scope and scale. What we're proposing is a permanent stage. There would be outdoor seating, some of it accessible, and others where you would simply bring your lawn chair, your blanket, and sit on the lawn. There would also be infrastructure for temporary sound and light systems. So the proposal is not that the town would ever get into the production of events or performances. The facility is there, a third party comes in, plugs in, and can do that. The illustrations or the photos here are not suggested architecture, but I think they speak to what this could be, a very simple building, landmark a structure within Naranja Park, a landmark structure within the town of Oro Valley, but built at a reasonable cost. That proposed outdoor performance center would be north of those multi-sport fields, and I think it might be worth our while to kind of envision what would happen there. You come to a performance, it's early evening, you set your blanket out on the seating area, there's the stage in front of you. Stage left is the Catalina Mountains as the sun goes down and the light changes on those. Stage right, as it gets a little darker, you're looking across the park to the city lights, the city of Tucson. I think at a reasonable cost you could have an outstanding community facility that's part of that outdoor performance complex. The event center is kind of an amalgam of a number of different facilities, and they were throughout the telephone survey and the questionnaires and the user group workshops is the need for flexible space. And so this is a building, and it's also some outdoor facilities associated with that. Some of the keys are it's fairly large, it's flexible space. This proposal is for about a 40 to 50,000 square foot building. It would accommodate a very wide range of users and activities, and integrates that indoor and outdoor space, and is cost effective to construct and operate. Just a very, very, very preliminary assessment of cost. This would be perhaps a third the cost of a conventional, traditional community center where you have specific spaces for different activities. So this is trying to get flexibility, maximum use, and the biggest bang for your buck, if you will. That facility would be located in the heart of the park. Some parking associated with it, obviously, and some outdoor spaces between that building and the fields to the east. Take a look at the kind of concept for the building itself. It's a pretty simple structure. In the upper left would be the entry to the building, lobby, some monitoring of access to the building, a reception desk there. There would be some small spaces for facility administration. Then kind of proceeding down along that left side, there would be restrooms, fairly large restrooms. These could be used for events in the building, but also accessible from outside the building, either or. So if you come to the dog park, you could use those restrooms without having to construct another structure. And continuing down on the bottom left-hand corner would be a food service component where that would serve patrons inside the building as well as outside on the patio that we'll talk about in a moment. The interior of the building is a big, large, clear span space. To kind of get a sense, those would be 3 basketball courts. The outer line would be the outline of a hockey rink. And no, we're not proposing to ever put a sheet of ice in this building, but it gives you a sense of the scale of what's proposed. So what would this building be used for, and how does it serve the Oro Valley community? And certainly indoor sports is a major component. Basketball and volleyball, there are huge numbers of young citizens, young residents that participate in those sports. There's an opportunity to have rec programs, to have tournaments, to have all kinds of programs associated with basketball and volleyball. The picture on the lower left there would be roller hockey, which is played and does not require any refrigeration or ice. Also, it could be used for indoor lacrosse, indoor soccer, very popular activities in the community. It's a complement to the outdoor fields, and I think it's important to kind of think about these users and when this building might be used. Certainly year-round for a variety of activities, but kids are out of school. It's June, July, and August. It's 108 degrees outside. There's lots of programs that could be developed and sponsored inside this structure. There are also a number of other uses that this building could potentially be put to, and certainly fairs and exhibits. be it an antique fair or an antique car show or a contemporary car show. And certainly there's a huge number of visitors that come to the Tucson metropolitan areas associated with the GEM show. This could be a component of that, bring people to Oro Valley, bring them to the hotels, rent this space for a period of time during the year. And community events and festivals. On a seasonal basis or even on a year-round basis, you could have the farmers market inside this building. There are a number of other events and expositions and small shows that could and would be very interested in using this space. So it's the indoor space as well, but then there are the outdoor spaces associated with it. And the notion of this building would be that to the top of the page is to the west, that would be kind of closed off so that it would be a very energy efficient building on that hot west side. But the east side, looking towards the mountains, would have the ability to open up walls and allow activities to occur both inside and outside of that area. That grand playground, that destination playground and that destination splash park would be kind of part of that outdoor space. To think of the scale, I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of the newer playgrounds that have been installed in the Metro Phoenix area as part of municipal complexes. And this would be of that scale and magnitude. And then the community lawn is just a place for all kinds of community events. The curved walkway to the bottom of the picture could potentially be used to bring in food trucks, either in conjunction with other events or as a food truck roundup, an event unto itself. These are just some images. Again, not suggesting architecture, but showing how buildings can open up and provide that indoor-outdoor relationship, extending out into the playground, into that community lawn area. And then we've talked about the playground and the splash pad, the outdoor patio and the food truck, potential for a food truck area. But I think the photo on the bottom right kind of captures what is possible with that community lawn. This is kind of an open space. Photo on top, you could have the Easter egg hunt there, if you would. But events like the 4th of July that have become a real tradition in the town of Oro Valley, this could kind of be the centerpiece of that. You could have some shade, you could have food, you could have all kinds of things going on in that kind of community, central community space in the park. And then to support all of that, obviously, there are utility extensions that would be required. A couple of points of clarification. There's quite a bit of turf shown in the park, and all of that would be irrigated with reclaimed water. That has been extended to the site and is available for use there. And there would be need for a maintenance facility. And during the course of this project, there has been discussion of a municipal maintenance facility, but the downside of that was it took so much space and compromised the ability of this to be a public park that this would be operations and maintenance facility for parks. So to finish the project, to get to that final master plan, we're presenting this to you tonight with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board's recommendation. With your approval and comments that we receive from you tonight, we'll work with staff to integrate those and finalize that in a pre-final or draft master plan. Go back to Parks and Recreation Advisory Board one more time to get their blessing and then ultimately bring it back to you for plan adoption.